Hey, welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. This is a take two of a video that ended up being 30 minutes of talking. Me talking as a talking head, and that's just too much, right? So we're not going to do that. We're on the monkey, the flying monkey, the Catalina 27. This is what we're doing right now. This is what we're working on. If everything seems bent and twisted, it's because I've got a lot of weight on the starboard side this morning, so everything's just a little off. Tools and stuff. I promised I would talk about anchor gear, and I will talk about anchor gear later. I have to finish deciding on how I'm doing the anchor sprit or the nudge sprit project first, because as it is, the anchor thing just you can't, there's no space for an anchor roller. The forestay comes right up to the very front of the boat, and because we use Hank-On jib with jib bag in the front and everything, there's no room to do anything. So I'm putting a small space forward of that. It's going to be 16, 18 inches wide and at most 18 to 20 inches long, because I don't want to build huge support structures. And it's going to come back 2 feet, good solid 2 feet, just so it can bolt on and be bedded in and bolt onto the backing plates, which is basically a quarter sheet of 1-inch plywood glued in underneath, and just to have everything structured really well so that it supports the weight up the front. I can put a roller on the front, and then back on the deck there's going to be a bollard to tie the chain off to, and that's going to go through and have an extra pad on the bottom, and it's just going to be really strong, because you don't want to tie the anchor off on the sprit. That would be silly. So that's going to happen. We'll talk about it a little more later. Part of the problem here is I don't want to spend the money on another anchor when I have an anchor that'll work. It's just that the anchor that I have is way overrated. I did call the company and talk to them and got an anchor size recommendation, and I have an anchor from that company which is much heavier, and we'll talk about that when we get to the anchor gear. Right now I want to talk a little bit about the order and importance of projects to get off the docks. And when I say get off the docks, I don't mean like yesterday. Like this boat goes out. We take this boat out, we motor around, we mess around with the sails, and we're doing stuff with it. What I mean is getting off the docks and staying off the docks for weeks, months, for a trip, for cruising. And it's a little odd, it's a little different, because there's a saying. This is a way to save money with a boat, and the saying is, never do work at a marina or at a dock that you can do at anchor, because anchoring is free and being at a dock is not. Now, we're at a marina with a month-to-month, quarterly payment, actually, type of situation for this, so it doesn't cost us anything extra to do the work until we leave. And then we go to day docking and going to transient slips and stuff. So it doesn't necessarily apply, but it does apply in terms of priorities. What are the things that I need dock space for to work on? And the things are, in no particular order, a hard dodger. And we'll talk about that a little bit. I got some photos of something that might actually make me rethink that. And the reason you need some sort of dodger on this boat long term is partly because of this. That angle going up is a problem. What it means is that when I've got the companionway hatch all the way closed, I have got a good 10 inches of space that the rain can just fall into. It's not vertical. It's like this. And so you need to have some sort of rain cover over that. You can use an umbrella and it'll do. You can make a little frame with some pipe, cheap aluminum tubing from old Bimini frames, and some tarp, and you can sort it out and you can start working on your design. But doing it in hard materials has some advantages, and we'll get to that. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. Batteries and electrical. So we need the battery capacity to run the things on this boat. Everything is very simple on this boat except for that. And even the electrical is mostly very simple. The running electrical is just 3 lights, into cabin lights, radio, depth sounder, a GPS if we get one, like a GPS chart plotter if we get one that's standalone. Right now we're using tablets and phones, and running lights, running anchor light, masthead light. So that's all there is, and that's really not very much. You can run off of a little battery pack. You could actually run it off of this 150 watt battery powered inverter because there's just nothing there. We're pulling 1.7 amps is the most I've seen with a couple of interior lights on, the depth sounder on, and the radio on. And it goes up a little when the radio transmits, but not much. That's, we don't have a 25 watt radio. We don't need one. So, running lights will be a steady state draw, so your battery wouldn't last very long, but I could run off of that if I needed to. So that's all. That whole system is just going to kind of sit there, stay there, and plug into whatever battery system I do. The battery system, the main thing about sizing the battery system is charging devices, phones, tablets, and the laptop, and running the little fridge, and then Starlink. All of those things together are enough that you really want to have a decent sized battery bank. So I've done this before, and I've run the similar amount of stuff, and I ran it off of a couple hundred watts of solar, 300 watts of solar. So what I really want to do is probably bump that up to 400 or 500 watts of solar. Probably what I'm going to do is start with 300 watts on one controller on something on the back, some sort of solar arch thing that I'll build, and then another 200 watts on a separate controller. Victron will tie them all together magically with the app, and those will be forward, and they'll probably be movable, like, I can put them on the rail or whatever. It also means I can start with the 300 watts and move forward from there, add the 200 watts later if I need to budget. Batteries, I would like to have, I really want to have 200 amp hours of lithium. I really kind of want to have 300 amp hours of lithium, but that's going to get expensive. And, I don't know, there's some questions there about how do I want to do that? Because if I do a portable unit that I can take ashore to charge off of mains if I need to, well, that's thing. That's a Jackery, a Bluetti, one of the portable, what they call solar generators. They're not generators, they're battery banks. But in marketing terms, they're called solar generators. That's a thing. Stanchions, Lifeline stanchions are horrible on this boat, and I've got to fix everything because I do need a tow rail that actually keeps stuff on the boat. And it's a project. And I don't have to do any part of that before we leave except get the bases, the tow rail bases, shaped. I need to figure out what I'm doing with them and get them shaped. Which brings up the stern pulpit, because there isn't one. There's a ladder folded up, but there's nothing back here. The lifelines actually end pretty much at the back of the cabin. So I need to build something there. I need it to hold up the, I need it to become a solar arch and hold up the solar panels. And I need it to, be safe. People moving around. But I also need it to hold stuff. You need to be able to attach your grills. You need to be able to attach your horseshoe buoy or your life-saving devices. You need to have it there. It's really important to just have for a lot of stuff when you're sailing. Backrest, high seat if you want to be up high. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. How I'm going to build it is a question. I could frame it with some wood, carve the pads to mount it, use some of the basic hardwood, some poplar or something, and then I can do it with 5/4 by 3, even 1x2s, and glass and epoxy and everything. I can build it all up that way. That would be really good for the solar arch and for the frame. It's not quite the same as doing lifelines, but I can also just do it out of the random scraps of stainless steel pipe that everyone has laying around from all the boat projects, and go buy them. People, it's not free. You have to buy it, and used fittings, because there's always these little hinged fittings and all sorts of stuff. Much easier to mount to the hull, because you'll have a fitting with a 2 screws, and then it's a hinged fitting. So as long as you have it angled the right way so that the hinge goes and does what you want, you just start putting it together, get it all set up like a Tinker toy, and then you figure out where you're drilling your holes for your screws, and you mount it, and then you brace it all, internal braces with the little pipe collars and stuff, and it can be very strong. And then solar panels on top. Rigid solar panels are designed to be self-supporting, so that the aluminum track that they're built into is pretty strong stuff, and that'll actually make it more solid. So that's a possibility. Probably more expense, but less work than wood, but also probably a little less strong. A little less likely for me to be able to rig dinghy davits off of it or something eventually, which is something to think about. So I don't know which way that's going yet. But I need to figure at least part of that out before we leave the docks for good. And I did see last week, 2 weeks ago on one of our cruises, I did see someone with an old Bimini like this frame that he had straightened up a little bit and supported, and then put his solar panels on it, and that was it. That was his solar arch in the back, and it was a really neat, economical way to handle it. It's just not going to do anything else. Like, you can't hang stuff off of it. Your laundry, you can hang your laundry off of it, but you can't build that into a stern pit structure, or leaning or climbing or whatever. So figure that out. What else? The hard Dodger, I don't think I'm going to be able to work on before we leave, but I might be able to get it started. And the reason is because what we have here, let me turn this around. The hatch rides in a track, and the track, part of the track that holds the hatch in, is attached here with a line of screws, goes down, up and down the cabin. Why that's important is because a friend sent me a picture of a Catalina-like boat. I don't think it may have been a Catalina with different port lights, because, well, I'm going to replace mine anyway. But it had the wide companionway hatch like we do, which is very wide and makes mounting a Dodger a little bit difficult. It's very wide and it's very long, goes halfway down the cabin. So what this did was it used that keeper railing, and that was the base, and that was what was built up to form the frame of a hard-topped Dodger. And then you have your vinyl and your snap-in stuff in the front and the sides that you can remove for airflow. And that was a really neat, elegant idea, and it was very tall. It came up to high enough. We have an adjustable boom. We have a floating boom, so I can. There's a certain height. I can get it up really high if the sail is the right size, And I might play with that while we're out. If I put it up too high for the sail to get fully elevated, I just put a reef in the sail and do it anyway. And then I can, have the sail recut at some point in time, or when I get a new sail, have it done at the right size. Or I can put in a half reef point and just run it reefed. So there's a lot of options in there. So it was very tall, but it also had a boom crutch built into it, and that's really valuable. Being able to really lock down your boom when you're at anchor is good, much less swingy. I really liked it. I really like the idea, because what these screws up here mean is that track is designed to be removed. It's not designed to be removed every day or every year, but you can take it off. You can unbolt it and remove it from the boat, rebed it, repair it, do all the stuff, remove it so that you can take your whole hatch and go fix the fiberglass, or rebuild it, or put a skyline in it, or whatever you're doing. So that's a really neat idea, neat capability of the design, is that it does still become removable, or remain removable. I think I'm going to build one. I think I'm going to build it like that instead of doing a pipe frame, unless I do the pipe frame on this support railing, which is totally fine. That's totally doable. I don't have to frame it out of wood and fiberglass. I can frame it out of pipe, but it's going to go on there, and that makes a huge difference. That'll be a wonderful thing. And then that'll cover this rain opening gap that we have. And that'll do most of it. That'll do most of what we need. And then this bimini here can just be adjusted forward or aft, or wherever I want to put it, so that it works with that. The bimini that you see behind me, it's cheap. Came with the boat, but it's a cheap. It's not a super special custom thing. It just happens to be there, and it works. It's good enough for now. You can't stand up under it because of the boom height, but it's okay. It's it's something to build off of. It's something to know about dimensioning and looking at as we build better stuff. So those are the things that really matter before we leave the docks. Everything else, from plumbing to hanging the electrics up, fixing that mess of wires, which it looks messier than it is. It just needs a box. All of the stuff, rebedding the ports, rebuilding the ports, all that stuff I can do on the cruise. A lot of it I can do while we're motoring. Like, there's work you can just do while you're on the ICW. Hey, you're going down a canal for 5 hours. You can paint. You can do stuff. So that's kind of a big deal. And that's really where we're at, is looking at what are the things that we really need to do for that. And honestly, even with that list of stuff I have, we could go tomorrow and I could work on that stuff. It's just that I would need marina space and days for some of it at some times, because I have to get off the boat and measure things. I have to get off the boat and get materials, stuff like that. So we'll see how that goes. Those are the things I really want to work on, and we're going to be it's going to be pretty interesting to look at the time constraints of that, because we have a season window and we're going to be going pretty quick. So it's all very exciting. So exciting. Projects to think about with your small cruising sailboat. Just stuff that you may want to look at. I do think a hard Dodger, as much as people pee on them on some of the forums because they're not racing things, I think they make a huge difference in terms of dry storage, hanging ropes. I've never seen anyone cruising with a Dodger who just puts it down and leaves it down. They're always up. So why not make it a little more structural, right? That's just big deal for us. And the solar arch is going to happen just because we have to have solar panels somewhere, and behind the boom is the best place to put them. That's it. Stay sideways.